We're headed to the Wild West this week, and we're bringing our 50-foot mechs with us.
This is Pixelated Audio Episode 5 featuring Wild Arms.
Welcome back to another episode. This week, as you might be able to tell from that opening track, we wanted to go with a little bit of a different style of music than we've played here before. I'm James, and here with me is Brian.
Howdy, partner.
Wow. So we're going to do Western jokes all day?
No, that was it.
Good. So the song that brought us in was To the End of the Wilderness from Wild Arms for the Sony Playstation.
And what an amazing track to start off the show with. So yeah, we're going to take a look at Wild Arms, specifically the first game in the series.
So there's actually 5 games in the series, not including remakes, but we wanted to single this game out and give it a little bit more time and justice instead of speeding through all of them.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's a lot from it that we can walk away with. It's different than what we've done on the show so far as well, you know, being just one game and also an RPG.
Right.
So Wild Arms is a Wild West themed, so to speak, RPG for the original PlayStation. It was released in December of 96 in Japan and a few months later in April of 97 in the US. It was published by Sony Computer Entertainment and developed by a Japanese company called Media.Vision.
So Media.Vision was founded in 1993, and for such a small team with under 50 employees, they've actually done quite a lot. They've done all the Wild Arms games, Valkyrie Chronicles 3, Chaos Rings, and even some stuff lately for the PS3 and Vita. But this first Wild Arms game is what really got them into the spotlight.
Right, and the game's lead designer is Akifumi Kaneko, who was responsible for a lot of the other games in the series. Yoshihiko Ito was also an other designer, but we're not really sure what else he's worked on other than being credited for the character design.
The composer for this game, as well as the others in the series, is Michiko Naruke, and she got her start composing music for Telnet Japan's development team called Riot, before moving on to Media.Vision. And over the span of her career, she's composed over 400 tracks for the Wild Arms series, which is just incredible.
I don't even think I know 400 songs.
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
I know, and we could probably spend an entire year's worth of episodes doing just Wild Arms.
Yeah, and if you like what you hear today, the original soundtrack for the game was released in Japan only in 1997 with a little over 30 tracks. However, in 2006, there was another release called Wild Arms Complete Tracks that was put across 2 CDs, and this time has, you know, the full album, full 80 tracks.
We'll put links on the website for anyone that might be interested in purchasing those.
Yeah, we'll be sure to put those in the show notes as well. But I think we should get into a block.
Sure. What do we got?
First up, we have Hope, followed by Alone in the World, and then lastly, we have Migratory Birds of the Wilderness. So let's give those a listen, and we'll be right back.
You just heard Hope, Alone in the World, and Migratory Birds of the Wilderness from Wild Arms for PlayStation, composed by Michiko Naruke.
Yeah, Hope is such a great, it's very peaceful, very happy.
Right. It's kind of, for me, I imagine that's what it would be like to wake up in the morning, like really great. Like that song playing would just be really nice.
Yeah, no, it's really early on in the game too. So it's kind of setting you up for, you don't know what you're going to go on yet.
Nothing bad's happened yet.
Yeah, everything's very innocent at this point in the game. So I love like those crescendos coming in and, fading back out. It's a really good track. Alone in the World This is still an early track in the game.
Right, and it's another beautiful one. And I really like the chiming cymbal sound that they mix into it. It's really
like those
nice.
bells and stuff.
It's a really nice
beautiful.
accent.
It's another early track, like we said. So it's still setting that tone, and it's very mellow. There's the cello kind of takes over, in place and takes over that melody, and I really like it a lot. It's a really cool track. Then we have Migratory Birds of the Wilderness, and this is the world map theme.
Right.
And
right. So you're going to hear this one a lot, and it's really it is really a nice track that has a very adventurous feel to it.
It's very pressing, pressing on forward, moving forward.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you leave the town and you walk out there, and it kind of jump starts you to get really excited to head out to the next area.
Yeah, you have these trumpets and horns, really playing that, in the background, really, forcefully, and then all of a sudden, then you'll have the flute playing, and it'll kind of take over that spot, and it kind of goes back and forth. And I like that a lot about it. It's very easy to listen to because you spend a lot of time on the world map.
Right. And one of the nice things about all three of these tracks is each track has obviously a different spot in the game, and they have a different emotion attached to them, and they feel very different. Like the first one was very happy, and the second one really did feel kind of alone, like you did feel kind of lonely. And then the Migratory Birds of the Wilderness is really adventurous, and I feel like it really kicks you off to go, and each of those songs really fits into the feeling that they're trying to convey in each part of the game.
Yeah, and I think this whole show, you're going to hear a lot of that. A lot of the different music blocks. We try to kind of keep together the ones that have a similar feel for us.
Right.
And like later on from the other blocks that we play, you're going to hear that those very similar kind of sounds that change on your location based on where you are, and kind of gear you up for that set to do so.
So let's get back to the composer, Michiko Naruke, for a moment, and let's talk about her career a little more.
Yeah.
Kaneko basically went up to her and said, hey, we're doing this Wild West setting type of a game, and we want the music to really fit that style, and this is something that she really listened to a lot of growing up, so it kind of worked out.
Yeah, and what I find is really cool about her is that, and I read this in a few sources, that she really studied the game's visuals and the story, and she made sure that each track fit with, a specific character or location or event.
Yeah, that's really important, especially for an RPG, because the music is really what sets the mood for everything that you're doing in the story.
Yeah.
And actually, this is probably a good point to get into the story a bit.
The story is pretty great. It's simple yet well thought out. The game takes place in the world of Filgaia, protected by these kind of spiritual beings known as guardians. It's really peaceful and prosperous. Everyone is happy. Life is good.
Well, it was, up until the invasion of an alien race called the Metal Demons and their leader, Mother, who basically lost their own planet and tried to claim Filgaia as their new home. But the story goes on to say that the humans, Guardians, and the other race that inhabited Filgaia, known as the Elrus,
who apparently used magic combined with some advanced technology or something.
Right, so they were able to fight off the Metal Demons and split Mother's heart into 3 pieces and seal them away inside of Guardian statues across the world.
And without their leader, they're pretty much exiled to the region known as Arctica and kind of stayed dormant there.
Right.
So jumping ahead 1,000 years, the civilization is kind of starting to rebuild itself. And once again, the Metal Demons come back to resurrect Mother and try retaking over the world.
Right, and this is a pretty cut and dry version, but there's really a lot to it. And one of the things that I love that they decided to do is start the story 1,000 years after the initial invasion that gives the world this really deep backstory and this complexity that builds over time.
Right, and you'd expect that from an RPG, really.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get into some more music. What do we have lined up?
On the list, we have Town, which is your basic town music that you hear in the game.
Unless some event or something like that's going on. But yeah, it's a pretty mellow track.
Yeah, it's really good. Next, we have Adlehyde Castle, followed by Warrior's Whistle. So let's get these started.
That was Town Music, Adlehyde Castle, and Warrior's Whistle from Wild Arms for the PS1.
Yeah, these were some really great tracks here that we, just played.
Yeah, the Town song, you were saying as we were listening to it, like I could just put this on a loop all day. And
yeah, I mean, it's really just it's just a really good track, and it's just nice, and it doesn't really feel like it would interfere with anything, and it just feels like this really mellow.
When I listen to it, I immediately feel like I'm seeing this bustling town moving, like villagers, running around doing their own things.
Right.
And so
right, and I was even actually thinking that the individual instruments in the songs actually feel like their own character, like the little drum character is like maybe there's a guy like selling bread or something, and then
right.
some of the other stuff is like maybe somebody delivering mail, and so it just feels like that bustling town, like you were saying.
Yeah, no, I think that it's a really good track for what they're trying to do. It's very mellow because when you're in town, that's kind of like your safe zone. You're not getting in these random battles. You're not really worried about fighting as much, or at least you're most of the time. And so having something that kind of is upbeat and kind of uplifting and keeps you, interested in what's going on.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah. And you spend a lot of time walking around the towns, talking to people, getting information, and everyone's really pretty friendly. Like so far, I haven't run into many jerks in these towns. So,
right.
So it kind of definitely fits with the whole environment of the world.
Right. So Castle is the next one, the Adlehyde Castle. And again, it's a really lively track.
Right.
There's a lot going on. Very regal.
Without being pompous, like it's like a friendly kingdom type.
Yeah,
feel.
and the drums kind of have this really cool like procession sound where it's almost like a march kind of going on. And no, it's a fun track. And Adlehyde Castle is a very cool location. So it's cool that the music really fits that environment. Next is Warrior's Whistle. And, as the name, there's a lot of tracks we have with whistling in it, but this is actually one that says whistling in the title, and it's more of like a piccolo or something, a very high
whistling,
flute.
But
and you get this, kind of like, wood block or clavis or something in the background, and it's a cool track. Like I like it a lot.
Yeah, and it kind of brings that Wild West feel into it a little bit, kind of hints at it, and that's one of the things I really like about Naruke is that she didn't overdo that Wild West sound, because here, we hear that all the time, and it's very cliche, but she just kind of hinted at it, so it didn't overdo it for me.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think we're ready to move on.
So I want to bring up what makes this game so great, or any RPG rather. It's the characters, and for Wild Arms, they really present our heroes in a unique way.
Yeah, when the game starts up, you have 3 different playable characters to choose from, each with their own starting location and backstory that starts to, unfold as you progress. And you as the player are more or less given the task of bringing them together before they start their journey.
So yeah, there's Rudy Rough Knight, Jack Van Brace, and Cecilia Adlehyde. And regardless of who you start with, you'll eventually play out all 3 characters, introductions before forming up your party.
Right, and Rudy is a 15-year-old orphan working on a farm in a small village called Surf, but later becomes an outcast for using a forbidden technology called ARMS, or Ancient Relic Machines.
It's pretty cliche, but it works, and it makes it easy to kind of gain this connection with your character, which is really important.
Right, and Jack is a treasure hunter and a swordsman that travels around with a talking wind mouse called Handpan, who's kind of like the comic relief and at times Jack's moral compass.
Finally, we have Cecilia, a young mage that spent most of her life studying magic at Curran Abbey. And like her name suggests, she's also the princess to the royal Adlehyde family.
Yeah, and like you said, none of the characters are terribly creative, but you really bond with them fast to keep you interested. On the flip side, the antagonists are pretty interesting too. Again, the metal demons are an alien race led by Mother, but after she's taken out of the picture, Siegfried, one of the metal demons left on Filgaia, steps in to kind of temporarily take the role of the leader.
Yeah, and Siegfried is really interesting. We don't see a lot of him early on in the game, but his role starts to kind of escalate as things are played out. He starts, to kind of question certain motives and whether they're good or bad.
We also have Belzik, who is kind of a bloodthirsty warlord, Alzahad, who's the scientist, Lady Harkin, who's a sword master, Boomerang, who's this really quiet and reserved knight, and Zed.
And Zed is he's got this really animated personality. He's not taken seriously. He's totally goofy.
Yeah, and even some of the other metal demons call him an idiot and things like that.
Yeah, he's the best. I love him.
Yeah, no, I really like him too.
Anyways, the uniqueness of the game really comes from those character bonds, and this is important for how the game is played. The game is sprite-based, and it's got that really early PlayStation kind of Super NES style look to it, like other RPGs, and it plays a lot like those games as well.
Right, and like we said before, all the characters are playable, either while in the party or when they're off on their own. You just have to switch to them at any time. And where this really comes into play is each character has their own special abilities, or tools as they're called in the game.
Yeah, for instance, Rudy has bombs that you need to use in specific, areas, like for puzzles and whatnot, and maybe like blowing up debris in a cavern or something to get through.
Right, and you can also walk by a bunch of crates and lay out a ton of bombs, and I really couldn't help but think of Bomberman when doing this.
Yeah, no, totally. And you have all these tools, and you slowly acquire them, and, you really have to understand how and when to use them.
And this is where this new layer of complexity slowly builds up. And I really love this aspect of the game.
Yeah, I think this switching on the fly is what makes the game really interesting and, for me, really wild arms.
Yeah, and when you start stacking up all the different aspects of this game, it really creates a game that stands out.
So let's get into some more music. First, we have After the Chaos and Destruction. Following that, we have Screaming World, and then Lament and a Promise. And once again, this is composed by Michiko Naruke.
That was After the Chaos and Destruction, Screaming World, and Lament and a Promise, composed by Michiko Naruke for Wild Arms on the PlayStation.
I feel like I have to take a Xanax after hearing that block. Yeah. So depressing, but oh man, awesome music.
Right. I've always kind of liked kind of sad, dramatic music, so this block especially fits really high on my list of songs I really like from this game.
Yeah, Naruke is so dynamic in what she's doing. I mean, we hear a lot of her, more lively town stuff that we played earlier, and then you just get this, really just depressing destruction, stuff going on, and she shows that right into the game. So and it's just great to see someone that has such a range of a skill that can take for a long game like this and really add something great with the music. That every event has something new, and it's really cool. Like After the Chaos and Destruction, we had talked about this track a lot, putting this in because this is one of the most depressing parts in the game, like early on in the game. Without any spoilers. I mean, the game is 17 years old now, so I guess we can say a few things. So this town gets totally, burned down by the metal demons, and it really my jaw dropped in this part of the game because it wasn't kind of what I expected. I expected some bad things to happen, but I mean, the level of bad things that happen in this game is really I was shocked and devastated by what kind of happened. And so imagine, if you will, you go into this town and you see like all these kids running around and you're talking to these people and stuff. And then this town gets burned down, and this is directly after that. And
to add insult to injury, this is like their favorite time of the year. They're having this huge festival, and so everyone is just on like the happiest that they've been all year.
And then you get right after all this, and it's basically this broken town. Like this really, like morale is gone, and people are barely hanging on to like even existence, kind of questioning it. And this song really kind of it's poetic because it's kind of telling this people's emotions through the music.
Sad, but
beautiful. Nobody has to say a word, and you understand what's going on. And I think that's what's really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, and you develop a relationship with these even side characters in the game, these little townspeople that are running around. Like you kind of grow to like them. Just like how we said with you really quickly bond with the main characters, you actually start to kind of bond with the city people.
With these NPCs, yeah. So at Screaming World, we kind of went in reverse order because Screaming World is actually what is happening during the destruction.
Yeah.
And what, opened my eyes right here was that during this part, this is where you're walking up to people during the destruction, and it's like, we're too late. Like this person's dead. And they're showing these bodies like all over the ground.
And some of these, are children.
Yeah. And they're clearly kids. And so it was really...
I was kind of shocked by it.
I was kind of shocked that they put that in there.
I thought, oh, this guy's hurt. Let me help him. And they're like, nope, they're gone.
Their
their wounds are too great. We can't do anything.
Now there were some NPCs in the game that you could help that were like, hey, let's save these. And later on, you see them in the hospital. So they kind of recover and stuff. But this track is really dramatic, and it progressively builds and builds and builds. But moving on to Lament and a Promise. This, I don't remember exactly where this fits in the game, or maybe
we may not have gotten there yet. That was what kind of my thought was, that I hadn't gotten to this point yet, because I mean, it's such a beautiful song that I'm sure I would have remembered it. But I mean, it's like I said, it's super beautiful.
Yeah, it starts out really, really slow, and I like that. It kind of it's just like the rain is dropping outside, and just everything's quiet and it's kind of dark, and then it slowly kind of builds up. That guitar comes in with a slide, and then the bass kind of, answers to the guitar, and it just kind of back and forth is really cool.
Right.
And then like 2 minutes in, like right when the song's about to end, you get the choir, come in, and it's a great way to end that track.
Yeah. And I was thinking that this song by itself feels like it has its own like story arc to it. Like it kind of feels like someone's kind of hurting in the beginning and something bad has happened and they're sad about it, and then it kind of picks up and almost like now they're ready to do something about that. And
yeah, it's like when we were listening to this before, before we were playing it now, you were saying that you're like, oh man, I don't know where this is in the game, but I'm afraid that somebody is gonna die.
Yeah, somebody important.
Yeah, somebody important is gonna die here. So,
but like in a lot of games, that's kind of works in the not the best interest of the bad guy, because it kind of regroups the good characters, and it kind of gives them that extra push to kind of destroy what they need to.
Yeah, no, totally.
But I'm really looking forward to getting to that part in the game because this is such an amazing track.
Yeah. Any other thoughts before we move on?
No, I think that we kind of covered everything for that. So let's talk about the battle system. The whole game has these 2D tiled backgrounds and sprites that look like, what we explained earlier, an improved Super Nintendo game. But during battles, Media.Vision opted for full 3D graphics, and by now they kind of look pretty dated.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And, this was a time when 3D was just starting to develop in games. It was one of those early PS1 titles that tried to do it. And honestly, it's really tough to look at today. I know that Sony at one point was really pushing developers to make use of 3D in games, so maybe that played a role in it.
Yeah, and to be fair, this was an era where games didn't use skin meshes and most models were untextured, and we'd be lucky to get a character that had 50 polygons or so. But
right.
I really like that early 3D looking games.
I think it has its places, but why change from 2D? Either go all in or don't do it at all.
I think a full 3D world would have been a little bit too much for this small development team, and doing just the battles kind of let them play with the camera and make this turn-based structure, in my opinion, more exciting.
I could see that. To me, it just felt a little bit out of place. That being said, though, the battle system is pretty good.
Totally. You've got a traditional turn-based battle system with standard attacks, magic spells, and items for you to use when you need. And you can also equip and summon guardians to help with, large elemental attacks.
Yeah, you also get force attacks. And to kind of explain this, all three characters have 4 abilities. Each time you either deal damage or take damage, this meter slowly builds up, bringing you to the next, tier of ability that you can use. And kind of like limit breaks in Final Fantasy.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it was an afterthought either because it's really vital later on in the game to learn how and when to use these. And I think the game is designed with that in mind.
Right. So let's say Rudy gets his force level up high enough to reach his first ability, where he does an arms lock on an enemy, and it's pretty much a guaranteed direct hit. And I don't know if we actually mentioned what arms actually are.
No.
But basically they're just guns.
Yeah.
So
that's really it. Yeah. I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yeah. So we're going to play some music from the battle sequence. First up, we have the main battle theme titled Critical Hit. It's a really high energy track that really pumps you up.
Yeah, and it has to be. You're going to hear it a few thousand times before the game's end.
Yeah, and crappy battle music can cripple an RPG pretty bad. So we have Critical Hit, Moment of Tension, and then Battle versus Mid-Boss. So let's get those started.
That was Critical Hit, Moment of Tension, and Battle versus Mid-Boss.
Yeah, even though I've heard these songs so many times, I still enjoy listening to them.
Yeah, no, they're great tracks, and they really, it's hard for a composer to write battle music. It's probably the most difficult track to write in any game, and because, like we said, you're going to hear it over and over and over.
Right.
And this is a time where you have to really plan out and strategize and
yeah, it's kind of a fine line to walk as far as the music goes, because you don't want it to be too intense and too kind of stress invoking, because you want to be able to sit and think but you also want to feel engaged, and
you don't want to get bored.
You want to feel like you got that energy, like you're in a fight. So, act like you're in a fight, but you also need to strategize because it's an RPG.
Yeah, and I really like that constant bass that, keeps, pushing forward. It's not overdone, and the percussion's not overdone to where you get that anxiety that we were talking about, but it's still keeps you drives you to, keep going further in the game, and it keeps you motivated to, stay with the battles and keep trying to, do new stuff and new strategies. So
yeah, and Critical Hit is just a perfect example of a great composed music for for you to hear over and over and over.
Yeah, and so Moment of Tension is definitely more anxiety driven,
right? And it lives up to its name, which Naruke is very good at doing that. As we've shown. So.
Yeah, and this track, it's very well done with the sirens and stuff like that, and it's almost like this alert, like this something's happening. Alert all the bad guys around the area. We're all going to attack this person at once. So
it kind of like triggers your fight or flight, definitely to flee. Like, I want to kind of get out of here.
Yeah.
Or end this battle as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And there's this low kind of almost like bass, like organ that is constantly playing in the background. And it's really ominous. And it's really, kind of this, dark kind of thing lurking over as, you have this high moment of anxiety, this high moment of tension. So
yeah, and Battle versus Mid-Boss is another great track that so when you're fighting the bosses, it has a different feel to it.
And it has to.
Yeah, and the thing I liked about it is that they didn't just take the regular battle music and just kind of make it more fast-paced or more intense. They kind of gave it this this air of importance to it, and it had like a more dramatic feel, and it has a slow pace, and it kind of builds, and it is kind of an epic feel to it.
Yeah, definitely more of a sense of importance when you're playing against a boss, because if, let's say, you were playing the same boss and you had the normal battle music that we heard earlier, you might not get that sense of this is something I need to be careful.
Yeah, it's super dangerous, more dangerous than normal.
But it's not over the top to where you're thinking like, oh my god, like I'm so my heart's beating so fast here, I just got to get this over with. It's more like, okay, this is I can get through this, I can do this, I can but no, those are all great tracks, and they're all really short, under a minute 30 each. So they loop, but I mean, when you're listening to it, you're really focused on.
Yeah, you're really engaged, so you almost don't notice the loop. And
yeah, but the music, every time you get in that random encounter, like that music shoots on and it pumps you up. So it's pretty awesome. Any other thoughts on those tracks?
No, I think that we pretty much covered everything on the battle music, which, I mean, I'm actually looking forward to popping the game on again and playing some more.
Yeah, I know. So let's kind of talk about our experiences with the game a little bit.
Okay.
I first got this game, I'd already beaten Final Fantasy VII at this point, and I was really jonesing for another RPG. So a friend of mine was like, hey, you got to try this game out. It's really good. I'm going to go sell it to Funko Land, if you don't want it. And he was like, I'll take $20 for it. So of course I picked it up, and I was really, really happy because I think it was still selling for over $35. So even used.
Right. Because it came out right around the time of Final Fantasy VII. So it couldn't have been that old. I actually missed out on Wild Arms, and I really didn't get into RPGs until much later, but now I really love them.
Yeah, I think it was quickly overshadowed by the whole Squaresoft wave, but it's not like it's an unappreciated gem or anything. There were a lot of people that really, really loved this game.
Right, and I would assume so, since it's such a long series, and this game actually even got a full 3D remake for the PlayStation 2.
Yeah, Wild Arms Alter Code F. I've never played it, but I heard the reviews weren't so hot.
Yeah, the screenshots looked really good, and it had additional story and some new characters added in, but I think it lost what made the original so great. And unfortunately, we see this a lot with remakes.
Yeah.
So getting ready for this episode, we actually logged quite a few hours playing the game. I personally put in about 15. What about you?
About 80. No, a little less than you, but I'm really hooked at this point. I want to write it out.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I really can't wait to see how this game ends.
Yeah, I was skeptical going into it. I wanted to replay this game sometime in life, and I never thought that I'd be able to make the time. But while we're doing this episode, it was a great excuse. So I'm glad that I invested this time, and I'm surprised about how much time I've actually put into it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like what they say about a good book is every time you pick it up, it's really easy to get sucked back into it.
You're right. The game's 17 years old, and aside from those hideous 3D parts, it still has this undeniable charm that makes the game worth playing today.
Yeah, even though I don't exactly agree with your view on the 3D, I 100% agree that this game is totally worth playing today.
Yeah, if you guys have a means to play it and haven't before, give it a shot. It's really, really good. Anyways, we have one last block to play, and this might just be my favorite 2 tracks. So the first track is Morning of the Journey, and then following that we have the Prologue Beginning from here. So let's take a listen to those, and we'll be right back.
That was Morning of the Journey and Prologue Beginning from Here. Again, composed by Michiko Naruke for Wild Arms on the PlayStation.
That first track, and I mean the whole block I love. Morning of the Journey is really good. It's kind of like it's this very peaceful ballad, and it's almost like it tells a story. The beginning is very like you're waking up and in the morning, getting everything ready. You don't know what's going to happen yet, but it slowly builds, and that kind of background orchestra comes in, and you really set yourself up on that journey. So
yeah, it definitely has a great build up where like you said, starts off really slow, and I love when that flute, it starts getting really flute heavy, and then they start adding more instruments, and it really builds up into this really epic, beautiful track.
You get those lower strings like the bass and cellos coming in and doing that dun 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 dun, and it's just a great song. Like it's almost between that. I know a lot of people love that opening intro song, and it's great. I love it, but this would make an equally amazing intro. So I don't know where it falls into the game exactly, but it's a great song. So yeah, moving on to the next track, the Prologue Begins from Here, or Beginning from Here. Another just amazing title. It's very somber, very slow starting, and but it's just you feel good when you're hearing it.
Right, and I love how it starts off, like you said, very slow and kind of delicate, and then it kind of drops, and then it comes in with that amazing whistling that this game has, and it's
yeah, the whistling actually was done by, and in fact for all the tracks, the whistling was done by Naoki Takao. And I'm not sure what else he's done other than this. I'm sure he's done professional other stuff and for other compositions. But man, I mean that's got to be a difficult thing to do. Whistling, I try to whistle like I'm out of key like all the time. It's hard. I can't move my mouth correctly or something.
Yeah, I mean, and it's such beautiful whistling, and like in some of the other tracks, it really kind of helps that Wild West feel to it.
Yeah, it definitely takes from those spaghetti westerns, and I think that she was able to balance. It doesn't feel like overkill. She was able to balance it very well.
It's not cheesy. It's not cheesy like the spaghetti westerns, but it's very beautiful, and it's almost like they really cared about that genre, in history of the Wild West feel. And
and it's just as valid as any other musical instrument. So it's a great track, and I think that this block it's longer than some of the other other tracks in the game. But what's interesting about it to me is that both these tracks seem to feature like a full orchestra, and they're not just synthesized tracks that we heard before. I mean, they're all great. They're all the songs in this album are great, but these two specifically feature I think a live orchestra. So it was really cool to kind of put these two together and also be our last block.
Yeah, and I think that I'm in the same boat as a lot of people that are probably listening to this episode for the first time, is that I wasn't really aware of Michiko Naruke's music, and after listening and playing this game, and I really am happy that I got a chance to hear all this stuff. I mean, it's a composer I had never heard of, and she's incredible, and I mean it's an incredible game, so I was really happy that I was able to go back and play this.
Yeah, and she's still doing a lot of stuff today, so it's really cool to see composers that have found their niche and are able to kind of keep captivating new people by constantly outdoing themselves each time. And so I think the other Wild Arms games have equally amazing music as well.
Right. So, and I mean, then to kind of remind everyone that she's composed over 400 tracks for this series. So, I mean, this is just one album that has incredibly amazing music.
And this definitely, I mean, without this soundtrack, I think the game would have done well, but I don't think it would have done as well. And I think this is where we really owe a lot. I think this is where the composers really are what add to such a magical experience that we can get from these games. And I think that's where we need to really make sure we give them credit. And for doing this podcast, that's what we're focusing on. We love to talk about the gameplay and everything, but the experiences that we remember and cherish are from what these composers have done and their contributions.
Yeah,
to
they're not
the
just
game.
These games just aren't visual. I mean, it's what you hear too. And you know, if with a lot of these tracks, I mean, you and I listen to a lot of video and music on a regular basis, and it's nice that when you hear a song that totally takes you back to sitting in front of the TV, you know, playing these games and it's great.
Playing a game, you know, in your underwear, like, you know, with
you
a
got
TV
your bowl of
dinner
cereal
or something.
next to you. Yeah.
It's good stuff. Anyways, I think that about wraps stuff up. So, if you have any game that you loved, you know, just please let us know in the comments.
Oh, before I forget, we wanted to give a shout out to the guys over at Bleeps and Bloops who gave us an awesome mention in one of their recent episodes.
Yeah, they have a video game music podcast. It's more from the composer-creator side. It's really interesting. Yeah,
and it's a totally different format and content than what we're doing, but it's still a great show with a lot of information for composers, like jobs and interviews and news, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really good. I started listening to their show recently, and I've listened to a lot of episodes now. I'm really enjoying it, so definitely check it out.
So thanks for listening. You can visit us online at pixelatedaudio.com, where we'll have all of our show notes posted and the tracks that we played today. And feel free to comment on it if there's anything you guys liked or, you know, wanted to see changed.
Yeah, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Pixelated Audio, and be sure to subscribe to us in iTunes or Stitcher, and we'd appreciate a review. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and if you guys like games like Golden Axe or Punch-Out, make sure to check out our previous episodes, and yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
So the track taking us out is Succumb to Wilderness, performed by Level 99 for OCReMix. And thanks again for listening.